And for more insight into the business of trademarks, I'm joined by Ann Bartow, a retired law professor and trademark law expert. Welcome to the show, Ann. Great having you. How difficult is it to get something like a catchphrase, sound, or color registered as a trademark? Does it take a lot of money to register?
So it depends on what you think a lot of money is. It depends if it's not too complicated, not be really expensive, but anytime you have to, hire lawyers and do research into something like trademarks, it's going to cost a bit. And you do have to do quite a bit of research with trademarks because you have to make sure that no one else has registered anything the same as what you're trying to register, but also anything that's substantially similar. So that's kind of one of the issues of trademark, is that a trademark protects something narrow, but there's a little bit of a scope around it that's also protected legally.
And what are some common misconceptions about trademarks?
I think sometimes people think they can own trademarks in a way that's really not possible, like own a word or a phrase or some kind of trademark free feature. And in fact, what you own is the trademark, but only in conjunction with a specific good or service that you've registered it. You mentioned in the intro, which was very excellent, by the way, Reese's orange, right? That's a unique orange color. But you also talked about sports, and many teams and many colleges and even high schools have colors that represent the team or represent the school. And orange is a very popular color. Tennessee uses orange, Clemson uses orange, Syracuse University in New York uses orange. They're all slightly different shades. Syracuse even has a nickname, the Orange Men, but they don't threaten Reese's peanut butter cups in any way, right? They can kind of peacefully coexist with everyone using the color orange for different things. But then you think the sports teams also all use orange, and somehow that is okay. We still know who they are, right? We don't usually get confused, but sometimes courts go a little far in giving maybe, I think, too much protection to a specific trademark feature, and that's hard on competitors. And it can also be hard on consumers.
Yeah, so you're drawing very interesting lines around trademarks that people may not really know about, right? Because orange, which orange? Reese's orange, or, how does that operate?
So it's kind of tricky. And what happened was in 1995, the U.S. Supreme Court entered its decision in a court case called Qualitex versus Jacobson Products. And that's when they decided that colors alone could be trademarked, that they didn't have to be part of a picture, part of a word or a logo, that just the color itself. And infamously, UPS, which is a delivery service in the United States, uses brown, and they were able to trademark brown for delivery services. And pink was one of the first colors. Owens Corning trademarked pink for fiberglass insulation, and pink is a very popular color. It also has a lot of different things that it signifies. If you saw the Barbie movie a couple years ago, you know that pink is very much the Barbie color. Pink is culturally and socially in the United States associated with female or the feminine, and then blue is associated with boys, but there are other associations too. One of the things about pink and blue that are interesting to me is if you go to other countries, sometimes they can be reversed. Sometimes boys are represented by pink and girls are represented by blue. And fairly recently in the United States, we have political parties that are represented by color. And one of the things that's really kind of funny to me, I love China. I've been to China many times. I lived for a year in Shanghai. One of my favorite restaurants in Beijing was called The East is Red. So China and red are very closely associated, I think, with many people. But it's interesting that one of the political parties in the United States, the Republicans, also claim the color red, whereas our neighbors to the north, Canada, have it kind of flipped, so that the more liberal, considered liberal party is represented by blue, and the more conservative party, the conservative party is inverted. It's inverted in Canada, where blue is for the conservatives and red is used more for the liberals. So if you watch the recent election results, you could be a little confused because of the difference with colors. The challenge that colors pose is that there's not so many colors, and they don't have the same kind of meanings as words have. We know that words can change meanings over time. I'm an older person. The younger people, when they talk about slaying or killing, that's a good thing, right? If you slayed it, if you're killing it, you're actually doing something good, whereas, of course, they have other associations too. So words can change meanings over time, but we do have more of they have more fixed meanings. We have dictionaries that we can consult, etc. When you look at something like colors, it's much more limited. The spectrum of colors is just 7, right? We use the Roy G. Biv acronym: red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. That's it. Now, of course, you can have different shades of colors, but the tricky part then is how do you differentiate between them? Because one of the things the Supreme Court did not consider in Qualitex, and I wish they had, is that people's eyes process colors differently. We know some people are colorblind, and then red and green are usually challenges for people who have color blindness. But even just people who don't have color blindness may see shades very differently. Grays, browns, greens, they can look different to people. So I think it's very hard to say where the boundaries of a shade of a color are for trademark purposes.
No, and light source changes the hue and the tone of a color as well. But in this complex scenario, I'd like to talk a bit about trademark infringement. I mean, you're gonna be infringing something. How common is it for, say, a small business to get sued for small similarities to a registered trademark?
So many large companies employ trademark lawyers just to kind of go looking for any other products or services that they might think is a little too close to their trademarks or their service marks. And so typically what will happen then is that the attorneys for the bigger companies, who are kind of watching the trademark register and watching what's happening in the industry, the relevant industry, they will send what we sometimes call a Bigfoot letter. It's a letter that says, cease and desist, stop doing what you're doing because we think it's too close to our trademark. So that's very common, and it doesn't cost them very much money to send a letter or sometimes even an email saying, stop what you're doing. And then a small company might get afraid that something bad is coming, that a lawsuit could be coming, so they change their practices. So there are a lot of letters that are issued and a lot of small companies that decide, I'm just going to change the trademark instead of having a big fight over the trademark. And I think that's too bad because I think we are at an inflection point in history where many words, someone has said that every word in the English language is a trademark or part of a trademark.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd actually prove something like that, but there are a lot of trademarks out there, and it makes it really hard for people to choose new trademarks for their new products. If you, for example, came up with a new brand of ice cream, you would spend a lot of time going through your creamy, cold, tasty, whatever, the different things that are out there, whether you could use them for your trademark. You could be clever like Haagen-Dazs. Haagen-Dazs just made up some words.
Yeah.
It sounds like it might be Swedish or something, but they're in fact just made up words, and that became very popular. But made up words can be a risk, too, if they don't catch with the public. And then if you want to have colors in your trademark, like I said, there's only really there's a fairly remarkably limited spectrum to choose from.
Yeah.
And that can be a problem because when you think about color trademarks again, so the Qualitex case involved dry cleaning pads and the color green. And so Qualitex they had sold dry cleaning pads for dry cleaners to use in many different colors, but they soon found out that green was the most popular color.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact reason for that, but I know dry cleaners use a lot of chemicals, but green is kind of associated with environmentalism and being healthy. So I think they like to use green partly to make it look like, don't worry about the chemicals, this is healthy or this is safe. But I also know from reading the case and
Ann
the
Bartow,
documents,
I have to
green
thank
is a good
you.
color for hiding.
We'll have to dry clean it here. Unfortunately, I'll spend a lot more time, but my time is up with you. So thank you very much, Ann Bartow. Great having you.
Great.